Welcome to the deep dive.
Uh,
Okay, today we're stepping away from the usual and diving into something a bit different right from the garden. We've got a real biological puzzle from your sources.
hmm.
Our mission is pretty clear. We need to figure out why a very specific insect, the Allocophora femoralis, the pumpkin beetle, is going after a plant it really shouldn't be.
Right.
We're talking about the Mexican sunflower. The sources describe a pretty aggressive attack, and this beetle is usually, well, super specialized.
It really is. This whole thing is a fascinating look at, botanical families, how pests choose their targets, and how sometimes looks can be deceiving in nature.
Deceiving is right.
It's like nature throws us a curveball just when we think we have the rules figured out. This investigation touches on why that happens.
Okay, let's set the scene then. Introduce the players. First up, the plant that's being targeted. Tithonia rotundifolia, the Mexican sunflower.
Beautiful plant. Vibrant orange.
Absolutely stunning. But the gardener's notes you pulled mention it's not the easiest to grow. A bit challenging.
That's right. The sources paint it as somewhat fragile. Seems it's prone to general pests, to things like mealybugs, which suggests maybe its natural defenses aren't, top tier compared to some other plants.
Okay, fragile. And botanically speaking, where does it sit?
Crucially, it belongs to the Asteraceae family. Think daisies, common sunflowers, even lettuce. That's a huge family.
Asteraceae. Got it. So not related to pumpkins or cucumbers at all.
Not even close, genetically speaking. Then that's key. Its chemistry should be completely different from what this particular beetle usually eats.
Right. So that's our victim. Now the attacker, Allocophora femoralis, also known as the pumpkin beetle or cucurbit leaf beetle.
Yep, that's the one. And this beetle is, well, a creature of habit. A major agricultural pest because it's so focused.
Focused on.
The Cucurbitaceae family.
Yeah.
That's its whole world. We're talking pumpkins, squash, cucumbers, melons, watermelons, gourds, pretty much anything in that family. Its entire life cycle revolves around them.
And there's usually a chemical reason for that specialization, isn't there?
Exactly. Cucurbit plants produce these compounds called cucurbitacins. They're pretty toxic to most insects, acts as a strong repellent or poison.
Ah, okay.
But this beetle, Allocophora femoralis, it's evolved to handle them. Not just tolerate them, but actually use them as a signal, like, this is food.
Wow. So wait a second, let me get this straight. This beetle has specifically evolved complex biochemistry to eat plants that are poisonous to almost everyone else.
That's its evolutionary niche, yes. A highly sophisticated adaptation.
And that's its signature move.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's attacking a Mexican sunflower, which is an Asteraceae and presumably doesn't have those cucurbitacins, then something's really off. It's like its whole system, its chemical GPS, has just gone haywire. It's not just trying a new snack, it's ignoring its own survival programming.
You've hit the nail on the head. That's the core of the puzzle.
Right.
Normally, the beetle's process would be land, detect cucurbitacins, eat.
Oh.
Or land, don't detect cucurbitacins, fly away.
Find a pumpkin instead.
Find a pumpkin, exactly. But the observations in your source clearly show that's not happening here.
Okay, so let's get to that observation. It's not just a beetle sitting on a leaf. The Allocophora femoralis is actively, systematically attacking the Mexican sunflower.
Mm-hmm.
And the sources give us this really specific detail about how it's attacking. This is fascinating. It says the beetles are cutting and removing distinct circular discs from the leaves, like little perfect circles.
Yes. And that detail, the circular discs, it's not just random munching. It's a huge clue.
Okay, why? What does cutting discs tell us?
Well, in many leaf beetles, that kind of trenching or cutting behavior is actually quite sophisticated. It's often a way to deal with plant defenses.
How so?
They basically cut a circle or a line around the area they want to eat. This can sever the veins, the vascular tissues, to transport defensive chemicals like latex or sap or other toxins to that specific spot.
Ah, like creating a little safe zone to eat in.
Precisely. It stops the flow of the plant's chemical weapons to their dinner plate. So seeing this disc cutting tells us a couple of things.
Okay.
One, the beetle is committed. It's not just taste testing, it's preparing the leaf using a known complex technique. There's intent there.
Right.
And two, it suggests the beetle might be expecting some kind of defense, even if it's not the cucurbitacin it's adapted for. Or perhaps it encountered something unexpected after starting to feed.
But it's doing this on the wrong plant. It's using its specialized cucurbit fighting tools on an Asteraceae.
Exactly, that's the conflict. The behavior is specialized, but the target is all wrong based on its known chemical preferences.
So if the chemicals aren't the main draw here because the attractants, the cucurbitacins are missing and whatever defenses the sunflower has aren't stopping it initially.
Yeah, the chemical hypothesis seems to break down as the initial trigger.
We have to look for something else, something more immediate, like what made it land and decide, yeah, this looks like lunch in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. The chemical system, which we normally assume is primary for a specialist like this, seems to have been, well, bypassed. Or maybe fooled at the first step. So what sensory input could be strong enough to do that?
Okay, so let's unpack the main hypothesis from the source material. It suggests the answer isn't in the chemistry, but in how the plant feels. Physical resemblance.
Texture over taxonomy,
At least true over taxonomy. I like that.
The sources draw a direct comparison. Genetically, they're worlds apart, right? Asteraceae versus Cucurbitaceae.
Yeah.
But physically, the leaves of the Mexican sunflower apparently share some key features with typical cucurbit leaves.
Such as?
Things like certain melon leaves, for instance. The shared traits mentioned are a soft texture and significantly a kind of downy fuzz or maybe fine bristly hairs on the leaf surface.
Wait, hold on. You're saying this beetle, with all its advanced chemical detection for poisons, gets fooled just because a leaf feels a bit fuzzy. It ignores the chemical signals or lack thereof because the texture feels right. That seems almost too simple, a huge blind spot.
It does sound counterintuitive, doesn't it? But think about how an insect might find and select a host plant. It often happens in stages.
Okay.
Stage 1 might be visual, finding something green. Stage 2 is landing. Once it lands, it uses receptors on its feet, its tarsi, and antenna mechanoreceptors to literally feel the surface.
Like testing the waters.
Exactly. It's getting immediate tactile feedback. And if that feedback, that soft, maybe slightly fuzzy texture, perfectly matches the feel it associates with its normal food,
Like a pumpkin or melon leaf.
that could provide a really strong positive signal. Strong enough, perhaps, to override the lack of the expected chemical cue, or even ignore a weak repellent cue initially. It feels right, so it proceeds.
So the Tithonia, the Mexican sunflower, is essentially wearing a tactile disguise. Its texture mimics the cucurbits so well that the beetle's first impression is this is home, even if the chemistry says otherwise later.
That's a great way to put it, a tactile disguise. The fuzziness, the softness, those surface characteristics seem to be acting as the primary trigger, the gatekeeper for initiating the feeding behavior.
It's almost like groping for a light switch in the dark. You feel the familiar shape and flick it, even if it turns out to be the wrong switch.
That's a good analogy. The beetle lands, the texture feels correct based on its programming for cucurbit leaves, and so it starts its feeding routine, including that specialized disc cutting.
Before maybe its chemical senses catch up and realize, hang on, this doesn't taste quite right.
Exactly. By the time any negative chemical feedback registers, if it does strongly, the beetle's already invested in the feeding process. The initial tactile confirmation was powerful enough to get things started.
So the analysis really points to physical resemblance being the key here. The Mexican sunflower isn't vulnerable because it's weak, necessarily, but because it accidentally feels like a melon leaf to the beetle's feet.
Unfortunate physical similarity seems to be the crux of it in this interaction, yes. It's a fascinating example of how complex specialization can still have these, well, loopholes based on simpler sensory inputs.
This definitely shifts things. We often focus so much on plant chemistry for defense, but this suggests texture can be a major player, maybe even a primary gatekeeper in some cases.
It certainly highlights that possibility.
Okay, let's pull this together. Our deep dive started with a garden mystery. The pumpkin beetle, Elacophora femoralis, a known specialist on cucurbits,
Plumpkins, melons, etc.
found attacking a totally unrelated plant, the Mexican sunflower, Tithonia rotundifolia, which is in the Asteraceae family.
All right.
The key evidence was how it was attacking, cutting those specific circular discs, a behavior usually linked to its specialized feeding on cucurbits.
A very telling detail.
And the explanation we landed on, based on the sources, isn't complex chemistry, but simple physical mimicry.
Texture trumping taxonomy.
Yeah.
The soft, fuzzy feel of the Mexican sunflower's leaves apparently mimics the texture of the beetle's usual host so well.
That it fooled the beetle's initial recognition system. The tactile sensation was enough to trigger the feeding response, overriding the expected chemical cues, feel over flavor, essentially.
Feel over flavor, yeah. It's a powerful reminder that specialization, even highly evolved specialization, isn't foolproof. Simple physical traits can sometimes create unexpected detours in ecological interactions.
Makes you really reconsider what makes a plant vulnerable or resistant, doesn't it? It's not always just about the internal chemistry.
Absolutely. Which brings us neatly to a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on.
Okay.
Considering this case where a highly specialized pest seems to be profoundly influenced, even tricked, by simple leaf texture, how much might we be underestimating the role of physical characteristics in plant defense overall? Think about plant breeding, for instance. There's often a huge focus on finding genes for chemical resistance. But what if breeding for a specific texture, maybe something unusually smooth or incredibly hairy or waxy, could be just as effective, or even more so for certain pests?
Because it messes with that initial landing and feeling stage.
Exactly. If you can disrupt that first tactile assessment, maybe the pest never even gets to the stage of tasting the chemistry. Could designing the feel of a leaf be a viable, perhaps overlooked, strategy for crop protection? It shifts the focus from purely internal biochemistry to, well, external architecture and tactile design, something to think about.